This is my new PC build. At least I think it is, because today I'm putting it up against my current PC, which is this one right here. They might look identical on the outside, but they're actually pretty different. This one has a 4090 and a 7800X3D. It's also fully liquid cooled, and this new one has a 5090 and a 9800X3D, and it's completely air cooled. Now, of course, the 5090 build is going to be faster, we all know that, but how much faster is the question, and also how much louder, how much hotter compared to this one? These are questions I legitimately do not know the answer to, but today we are finding out. Let me also bring you up to speed on this new build because I actually have changed a couple things. This is the fastest gaming PC that I've ever built, and it's kind of insane that it's in this tiny form factor. I was really hoping the 5090 wasn't going to be this giant quad slot monster when it came out, and instead Nvidia actually made it smaller than the 4090 with a more efficient airflow design. Now the hot air just passes right through the heatsink, and it actually works pretty well in this case. You can offset the riser cable and the motherboard and create this nice big gap of extra breathing room in the middle, which is then exhausted by these two fans at the top. So in terms of upgrades, we've got a couple things. First, the RAM. Everything else in this PC is max spec, so why not that as well? So this now has 96 gigabytes of DDR5 running at 6400 CL32. This means that I can run Resolve, After Effects, Blender, and Photoshop all at the same time and probably still have some headroom. And on rare occasions, I have actually had to do that. I did have to remove the heat spreaders on these ones though, just like my last modules as well, because they won't fit under my CPU cooler otherwise. Hopefully these won't die on me because this definitely voids the warranty and they were expensive. Storage is also getting a really big upgrade. This will be the highest storage machine that I've ever run, 8 terabytes in total. I'll be upgrading the boot drive to this 4 terabyte Samsung 990 Pro and then borrowing another 4 terabyte NVMe from my current machine when I properly switch over. I also went ahead and made some custom cables. I did this for my previous build as well, and it took a long time, but it was definitely worth it. I'm a big fan of that OEM factory, just unsleeved, clean cable look, especially when they're just really short and efficient cables. For a really high performance, small form factor PC, it's the icing on the cake. These ones though were a lot more difficult because of this power supply. It uses really small plugs, which I didn't buy. Now, normally when I build custom cables, I build an entirely new one from scratch and use the original cables as a bit of a reference to see where each wire goes. This time, I couldn't do that because I didn't have those small plugs. So I had to de-pin the original cable and use that as my starting point. In the end, I made a new 24-pin and a new 8-pin for the CPU, and I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. I also made some cooling vents for this build, which I 3D printed. These also turned out pretty nice. There are these shrouds which press fit onto the 5090, which I was pretty pleased with. They just kind of control and direct the airflow where it's meant to be going. And then there's quite a lot happening for these top two fans, a big vent and fan spacer setup. So lower turbulence for those top two fans and just more channeled airflow in general. Really surprising though, this didn't make much of a difference at all. Like in terms of temperatures, it's like 1 degree better on the GPU, which really surprised me and blew my mind. I tested all these different variations of vent because it just wasn't making sense to me. But yeah, 1 degree on the GPU at most, which is like within margin of error. Really surprising, but I'm guessing that this build, being as compact as it is just already like 90% channeled airflow already. I mean, there's only so many directions the air can go, and with these top two fans, they must be pretty powerful and effective even without the vents. There are only a few things that I really wanted to test out on this new system, things that I do a lot of but are also really demanding, especially on that GPU. So first up, we've got some video editing. So I've got a 6-minute timeline here in DaVinci Resolve Studio, color graded footage, exactly just how I would grade it from a mix of my recent videos. And there are a couple of clips here where I've had to use denoising, so the footage is a little bit noisy, a little bit grainy. You go in with the denoiser and it smooths everything out. The problem is, it's really demanding to play that stuff back. So this clip in particular, I can't get full smooth playback on my 4090 PC. It chokes up and lands around 24 frames per second, but here on the 5090, it actually plays back perfectly. I can scrub back to it, press play, and then we get the green light, 30 frames per second, no dropped frames. I thought I'd also include my previous PC in these benchmarks as well. This is my 3090 liquid cooled build in the Ncase M1. Has to be the heaviest PC that I've ever built. This thing is an absolute brick, man. But yeah, this can only play back this clip at around 15 frames per second. Now I usually upload these videos as soon as they're ready, so faster export times are always appreciated. And this is something that I noticed a big jump between my 3090 to my 4090 PC, around a 40 to 50% improvement in render times, which is definitely noticeable. As for the 5090 PC, it's not as impressive, but it's still good. About a 30% cut down there, which is definitely welcome. And then we've got Blender, something that I'm doing a lot more of recently with some animations and some product shots. We're fully loading up both the GPU and the CPU for this one, and here the 5090 system is about 28% faster than my 4090 build. I know it doesn't sound like much, 40-second difference, you know, that sounds basically pointless, but what if this was rendering an animation like hundreds and hundreds of frames? You multiply 40 seconds by hundreds of frames, you're now saving hours. I was really surprised by my old 3090 system here as well. I think because we're also loading up the CPU quite a bit, the 12900K in there just having more total threads than both of the Ryzen gaming chips that I'm using in these T1s does seem to make a difference. So yeah, maybe I am trolling by only running an 8-core CPU. And then I also use Blender for some animations here and there. So this is an upcoming video that I've been working on, and this is the animation. It's roughly a 300 frame animation, but I'm only doing 90 frames for this benchmark. But yeah, a bit of a difference here as well, about a 35% gain for the PC with the 5090. Now for gaming benchmarks, I didn't want to test a whole lot because I've already done individual dedicated videos for the 9800X3D and the 5090, loads of benchmarks for those. So I wanted to test basically two scenarios: Cyberpunk fully ray traced at 4K, and then the esports stuff as well. So in Cyberpunk, we're seeing slightly over a 30% bump for the 5090 and the 9800X3D, which is not bad at all. It's kind of what I was expecting. Going from 70 to 93 FPS, it's a big difference in smoothness. You know, probably don't need to adjust any settings at that point, whereas with my 4090 build, I likely would have. So nowhere near the jump that I experienced going from my 3090 build though, which is a real shame. That was a literal doubling in frame rate. And then Overwatch 2, which I play at 1080p, 480Hz, all those settings. Again, there was actually a bit of a bump here between my 3090 and 4090 systems. Slightly better input latency as well, but 5090, 9800X3D, basically no difference. Potentially at 1440p, 480Hz, there'd be a bit more of a difference, loading up the GPU a bit more, but yeah, 1080p, basically nothing. One thing that is actually worse on this new 5090 build though is the cooling. That liquid cooling setup on my 4090 PC is just better. Much more cooling output, the GPU runs a lot cooler. There it's sitting at like 60 degrees at full load. Here, this 5090 is topping out at around 70 degrees at full load, and it's louder as well. So yeah, less total cooling output for sure. That's even after running some tweaks on this 5090 as well. 75% power limit with a 250 megahertz overclock, which lands us around stock performance, but with now 430 watts of total power draw instead of the default 575. So yeah, I'm gonna be switching over. How could I not? But I think a similar liquid cooling setup to my old PC is definitely up next.